We're looking at the Tabernacle, this amazing tent that God instructed Moses to build for the wilderness, where God would live among his people. And it's part of this reflecting our value of creative faith, connecting to culture, about how we demonstrate the good news, about how we're innovative and creative, and how we're colourful in what we do, and how we can be relevant as well to the people around us. The session today is connecting to culture, actually how we can be absolutely relevant to our friends, to the culture that we find ourselves in, and how we can somehow explain or demonstrate our faith in Jesus in ways that people really understand. And that's what the Tabernacle was, actually. The Tabernacle was completely understandable. It was, in fact, the pattern of the Tabernacle, the way it's built and its design, is just about exactly like Ramesses II, which is one of the pharaohs of Egypt, his war tent, his war tabernacle. And so when people would have looked at this tabernacle that God had designed, they would have been in awe of it, because they thought, oh my goodness, there's a warrior, there's a king in that place. It wasn't odd, it wasn't different, it was actually what was expected. But what was odd and different about it, actually, was the presence of God in it. So people noticed it in a special way, even though it looked like one of Pharaoh's war tents. Now, when Jesus appears on the scene, John says that he became flesh and blood. He moved into the neighbourhood. One of the things we can think about is how do we incarnate the gospel? So Jesus, the incarnation, is all about God becoming a human being. He comes and lives in our experience and lives in our world as Jesus, the fullness of God living in Jesus. And Jesus then demonstrates who God is by walking and talking and living in a brilliant way as a human being. So how can we live like that? How can we be the flesh and blood of God? How can we move into the neighbourhood and demonstrate God? That might be one of the things to talk about, is to emulate Jesus. What does it mean to live a life that is a normal life and a recognisable life as a human being in Staffordshire, wherever we are, but in a special way, like the Tabernacle was special, because we're filled with the Holy Spirit. And then as we move on through this, the next thing is the design of the Tabernacle, which I've noticed. I've got a picture of the design of the Tabernacle, and it's just full of really interesting things. So part of the design is you go in through the gate from the east, and then there's a place to wash. There's lots of water, which is good. And then there's a big altar where there's loads of food being cooked. And then you go further in, and there's a lampstand, and it represents the tree of life. And there's all sorts of things like that. The design of it somehow connects and makes sense to all sorts of different people. The design tells the story. So one thing we might want to do is work out, okay, how can we design our life, or even design our witness, design who we are as a church, design what we do in such a way that people go, I get it now. I get it now. What is it about the culture around us that we can say, right, I want to understand the culture around us so that I can explain who Jesus is in terms that people will really understand. St. Paul did that. He went to Athens. I don't know if he'd ever been there before, so it's a new culture for him. And he spent lots of time looking at the culture and understanding it. And then you can read the talk that he gave about Jesus, about God, but it was in the terms that the people in Athens would really understand. So we could perhaps talk today about how do we do that? How do we flesh out our gospel in words and songs and in the arts and in stories, and how do we do that in church and in working in the centres that we have in such a way people go, oh, I really get it. I really like God. I want to know more about your God. And then finally, you might want to think about how you personally do this, how you do it at school, how you do it at work, how you do it with friends, with family. What does it look like to connect with your immediate culture? What is that? And perhaps pray for one another as well. There's plenty of questions that you could look at in your notes, but it'd be fantastic just to pray for each other to be filled with the Holy Spirit, so that even though we live normal lives and we do normal jobs and we go to normal shops, that there'll be something really special about us. And there'll be opportunities for us to be filled with the Holy Spirit in a special way, but in a normal context. And in those opportunities, God would really use us. So do pray for each other for that.